Hi there, and welcome to Master of Horror, where I give you the most scariest stories that I've ever come by. These are 3 true, scary, paranormal stories with thunderstorm sounds, number 46. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Okay, my friends, let's begin. True paranormal story number 1, The Hooded Figure. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, I shared a room with my parents, and one night I was getting home late with my mom. As soon as we walked through the front door, I looked down the hallway to see a short-robed dark entity standing there, staring right at me. I couldn't see its eyes under the hoodie. Where space should be, it was all dark. I told my mom, and it disappeared by the time she looked. About a week later, as I was sleeping in the middle of the night, I felt something pulling on my leg. I woke up and looked towards the foot of my bed. This time, it wasn't wearing a hoodie. It looked like a gremlin. This happened on and off for a couple of months. When I woke up and saw it, it was because I felt something watching me. I was unable to move or scream for my parents. I would pull the blanket over my head sometimes, hoping it would just go away. Finally, one night, as it was pulling on my leg, I got the nerve to take a swing at it. It then disappeared. Every night after that I prayed, and I never saw it again. About 4 months ago, a friend of mine was telling a group at work about how he had seen a demon-like creature at the foot of his bed when he was little, and I ended up finishing the story for him. He couldn't believe it. We both had the same experiences. I still wonder if anyone else has ever experienced something like this. True paranormal story number 2, The Voice. It was about 7 p.m. and I was alone at the house. My parents were out and I was reading a book for homework. Suddenly I felt a cold chill come over me and immediately felt someone being in my house. I feared if I turned around something would try to kill me. I ran out of the room to the living room. I was beginning to calm down and tell myself that I was just being paranoid and there was no one in the house when I heard a voice whisper very close to my ear, and it sounded to me like it said, "I'll be waiting for you." It sounded like it was a man's voice, but it sounded dead. Needless to say, I freaked out and ran to my next door neighbor's house and told them what had happened. They said that they would come over and take a look. So my neighbor came over and looked around my house, even in the closets. My neighbor finally gave up and told me that I was probably just hearing things, and she went back home. I was still scared and stood by the front door, ready to run out if I heard anything. When my parents got home, I told them what had happened, and of course they didn't believe me. That night I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I didn't know why I had woken up, but I can recall being very frightened. I immediately felt the same freezing cold chill, and I sent someone else in the room with me. Then I heard it again. The words were more stretched out, however, and it sounded like it said, "I'll be waiting for you." I screamed, and my parents ran into my room. I told them what I had heard. They comforted me and told me that I probably just dreamed the voice, and they said nothing would hurt me. I finally calmed down, but I was still scared. I went back to sleep, but the next morning I woke up and sat up and noticed that something wasn't right. I looked up on my dresser and saw that my cross necklace wasn't where it should be. I got up and frantically looked around my room. I was about to give up hope when I stepped on something sharp, and I looked down and saw my beloved necklace smashed. It was in pieces, littered across the room floor. It looked like it had been coated with blood. The pieces were rusted and red. I've never heard that scary voice since that day. I truly believe I had an encounter with an evil being. Something straight from hell. True paranormal story number 3. The Ouija board. In the fall of 1996, my friends and I spoke of doing a Ouija board session. Skeptical as I was, I gladly accepted the opportunity. We didn't have a board, and I didn't want to drive everywhere looking for one. So my friends and I made one. It was a piece of cardboard with a lettering on it. We put the sun and the moon on the top corners also. For the planchette, we cut out a triangular piece of cardboard which had to be moved with force since it didn't slide smoothly like the one sold at stores. We lived in Huntsville, Texas, and the day we decided to do it was the same day Martin Garu, a prisoner who was on death row for murder, had escaped and had just been found dead in the river not too far from my friend's house. The house we were in was old and scary looking. We were in the middle room, which was pretty large. It could have been a second living room area, but at the time was being used for a bedroom. All 6 of us gathered around the board in the room, and the only light coming from a large candle we had. Now, all night, a couple of my friends were saying, let's talk to Martin Garu's ghost, the man who died earlier that day. So we sat around the board, and Tanner and Melissa were the only ones who were going to touch it. Tanner had never done anything like that, but Melissa claims to have witnessed how it's supposed to be done. So, they both put their hands over the planchette, and Tanner asked, are there any spirits out there tonight? The planchette moved by itself. This was very shocking because their fingers never actually touched the planchette. They were merely 2 inches above it hovering. As soon as it moved very slowly, it amazed everyone. At that point, anyone who was skeptical was now, at least, very curious. The planchette slowly moved to the word yes. From that moment, I only remember a few of the questions. I remember when Tanner asked, what is your name? It replied, I used to be Martin Garu. Then, some weird stuff happened. Tommy was sitting next to me and he nudged me and said, did you see that? But before I could answer no, Chad, another friend, said, I saw it. Personally, I did not see anything, but later they said the left side of the planchette picked up off the board by itself and was dragging. I did see something paranormal that made me a believer to this day. You see, their fingers were on the letter T, and the planchette quickly slid over to the letter A while their fingers were still on the letter T. They got really scared and pulled their hands away after they saw that. Shane, another friend of mine, was sitting on the bed about 4 feet from the board. He told us Martin Garu went to high school in Corpus Christi, but he didn't know where as he traveled a lot as a high school student. He knew most of the schools there. Everyone else there didn't know much about Corpus Christi or knew anything about the schools there. So Tanner asked the ghost Martin, where did you go to high school? The planchette slid to R, then the letter A, and Shane's eyes watered. He moved quickly to sit right next to the board and said, no way. Then it went to the letter Y. Shane said, the Ray Texans High School. This shocked everyone. I know that they were all terrified just as I was. At this point, Tanner ran into the kitchen and turned on the light. He had goosebumps and his eyes were watering. I remembered as if it were yesterday. He said, I'm not going back in there, Tommy. You see, the house belonged to Tommy. And Tommy said, well, go ask it to leave, because if there's something in here, I want it to go. So Tanner agreed. Tanner went in and asked the ghost Martin to leave. The planchette went to the word no. He asked it again, and it still replied no. He asked the third time, and it went towards the word no. Then the planchette went to the middle of the board and just sat there. It would not move again. So we went to the back porch and burned the board, while some of us smoked. When we went inside, as soon as the last person entered the kitchen and shut the door, the pots fell off the counter in the kitchen, and the pictures on the refrigerator fell to the floor. Everyone was silent. Tommy and Chase slept in the other room that night and took the deer heads off the wall. They said they didn't want them to talk to them in the middle of the night. I understand completely how the mind makes people think they see things they do not. But that night, there was no other explanation for what we saw. Thank you, my friends, for listening to Master of Horror. I hope you enjoyed these 3 true scary paranormal stories with thunderstorm sounds. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe for more paranormal true stories. Okay, my friends, till next time we meet again, have a scary night, and please don't forget to leave the nightlight on.